so much, Cam. Thank you, everyone. It's great to see you all. It's great to see lots of familiar faces that I haven't spotted in a long time. It's really great to be here. So I'm Kathleen Ramos. I work as the Practice Director for Quality Engineering at Planet. I also teach software testing to university students at La Trobe University in undergrad and postgrad studies, teaching them ISTQB Foundation and automation and also performance testing. And I also work with international standards with the ISO and IEEE on standards like ISO 29119, and I'm also working on a brand new standard called 25070 Quality Engineering. So watch this space. We're establishing a local working group for anyone who wants to get involved. So my portion of the talk is on how we optimize the life cycle and how we can adopt AI in key portions of the life cycle to accelerate our delivery. And my colleague,
Thanks,
David.
Kathleen. I'm David McGregor. I am but a lowly Associate Practice Director. I bow down towards Kathleen. She does so much. I help look after the automation engineering practice around the globe at Planet. So I think we've got about 270 odd automation engineers that we look after across the globe. So I get the fun job of being able to pick up various tools, play with them, try them out, and see if they're fit for purpose. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about, I'll continue on from what Kathleen's saying, but we're going to have a little bit of a look at some automation, a little bit of AI, and I'm going to try and pay out Cam as much as I can, because I realise that we are standing in between you and the prizes and nibbles, so we won't go for too long. Maybe just an hour and a half, if that's all right.
And beer for anyone who wants to come to the General Assembly, of course.
All right, over to you, Kathleen.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll cover the first portion, quality engineering. And one of the things that I like to look at is actually when I start looking at what do we need to change in our industry and what do our customers need to succeed in their delivery, I usually like to start with actually where are the key challenges. And Planet used to run a thing called the Planet Index, for anyone who remembers that. Now we've relaunched it as the Planet Global Quality Index, and one of the questions we asked is, what are the key challenges your organisation is having in regards to quality? And we found, not surprisingly, or at least it wasn't surprising to us, requirements are unclear, undocumented or incorrect, and really not understanding stakeholder expectations, which is much the same thing. And that came out as, two of the top 3 challenges that organisations are facing. How many people here have found quality has been impacted by poor quality requirements? Yeah. It's the bane of all evil, is a poor quality requirement. Also, another key challenge was increasing speed without sacrificing quality, and that automation is too difficult to build or maintain. So, of course, that's David's area. He'll be talking about that. I'm more focused on the upstream, the shift left of quality. So one of the things that probably has been on a lot of people's minds and that has sprinkled through the conversations today is, how is AI going to change our roles? How is our AI going to change our jobs? And, if we have a look at the really simplistic view of our life cycle, cutting off things like, planning and whatnot, and we just say, at some point we need to take requirements as testers, we need to take requirements and turn them into a model that we can design tests from, whether it's an automation model or if it's a business process diagram or, as I'm teaching at university, a state transition diagram or a use case diagram. We often start with a model of what we're going to test. We then write and execute tests against it, and of course, hopefully in parallel to that, the code is being developed. Hopefully it's not too waterfall with us sitting after the development. And then eventually we're evaluating, we're reporting the results. Now, there may or may not be levels of quality gating in there. It depends on the organisation. So if you're highly agile and you're working on a website, then maybe you have very limited quality gates. Maybe the only quality gate is a message on Slack. Hey, how's everyone feeling about the current build? Is it ready to go? Or maybe it's all automated. Maybe my tools are telling me that we're ready to go and I'm getting a green light on a dashboard, even better. In some organisations, as Anne-Marie pointed out, sometimes it's more the Gandalf approach. You shall not pass, because I need proof. I need visual proof. I need a conversation, collaboration between the team to figure out if we're ready to go live. Typically more so on the safety critical front or anything that is sort of going to be, very impactful to the business. I wish CrowdStrike had had a little more of that, just a little more. But how is this changing, or how is this going to change as we transition to adopting more and more of an AI-driven life cycle? So in an AI-driven life cycle, we may eventually see the day that the requirement model that we are working with is actually automatically generated. Hey, some of the requirements may be automatically generated. If I've got a solid enough model, as Eric pointed out, if I've got a solid enough model, a diagram that represents my system, in fact, it's really easy for a business user and a tester to look at that model and say, is that complete? Is that correct? And in fact, I ran an experiment once with a real customer. We had someone actually inspecting requirements, doing formal inspections of the requirements, and also using a process called behaviour tree analysis to actually model the workflow within the application. A $40,000 investment in modelling the requirements and doing inspections allowed us to prevent $120,000 worth of defects from making it into the code. We found 6 out of 30 requirements had defects or ambiguities that would have resulted in critical defects or high severity defects in the code. So 20% of your requirements are potentially going to result in significant defects. And when you try and review a written document, it's really hard to see if there's any gaps. Whereas if you're visually inspecting a diagram, it's far easier to find where the gaps are. But we may find a situation where once you have a good enough model, as Eric pointed out, you should be able to just generate your code and your tests off that. Maybe eventually we've actually got AI even evaluating the quality of the tests that were generated by another AI. Maybe we eventually are kind of, do we need the people in the loop anymore? I hope so. I hope so. Because as Dean pointed out, we don't want to make ourselves completely redundant within our industry, but maybe there are some portions of it where we have a little less human intervention. But if we're going to do that, if we're going to remove humans from that loop, I really want to make sure we get those requirements right in the first place, because that's where most of the defects, or a large portion of the defects, come from. So we've done some experiments and found actually you can model requirements automatically with ChatGPT using Plant UML and Mermaid. Has anyone used Plant UML or Mermaid? Okay, I'm so glad. I'm going to teach you something that's useful. It's good, it's good. In what context have you used it?
Just for drawing flow diagrams into Wikipedia.
Yeah, great. It's a modelling language that allows you to basically create a diagram from a code. It's a really simple coding language. And ChatGPT is really good at Plant UML. It's not very good at Mermaid because it hasn't been trained on the latest version of Mermaid, and it's starting to have problems with Plant UML. What I'm going to do is actually demonstrate that. In the words of my colleague, Juan Flores, I now pray to the demo gods to hopefully have a successful demonstration. So I'm going to flick across to Planet's AI tool, Amplify, which I love. It's our in-house tool and it keeps all our work private. We can ask it questions. We know that's not going back to Elon Musk or anybody else, which is good for us. Now, I have some requirements on the right. They're very wordy. It's actually requirements for a cruise control system. The quintessential problem that you set for 3rd and 4th year students when you're teaching them state transition diagrams. Now, if I was to ask you to review those requirements and tell me, are there any bugs in my requirements? Have I specified my requirement completely? Yeah, I mean, even I would look at it and go, oh, this is really boring and I don't know, I'm probably not going to find all the defects. I don't have time to read documents anymore. So, if I was asking a student to do this, I'd say, well, draw me a state transition diagram for the cruise control system. The way I would ask Amplify or ChatGPT or my favourite AI tool is I would just go ahead and update that text and say, well, you know what, write me Plant UML code to draw a state transition diagram. And this is really cool. So we take a copy of that. It's just a requirement that specifies, what I need the system to do, and all I've said is just go ahead and generate that Plant UML code. Now, if I was to draw that diagram manually, if I was drawing it for a customer or a student, I can tell you I would spend probably a good 45 minutes drawing that state transition diagram, because I'm such a detailed person. I'm terrified of failure, and everything's got to look perfect. So I'd spend so much time making it perfect. But instead, you know what? ChatGPT can do a pretty good job. You can see that it's a modeling language, similar to a programming language, simpler even than a programming language. Now I can take a copy of that. I can go to draw.io, which is a freely available tool everybody has access to. I can just go ahead and say, you know what, insert that code in Plant UML. And this is where I'm hoping the demo gods are on my side. And I'll just go ahead and say insert, and boom! Yay! It works, it works. Okay, so let's have a look at the diagram. Now, if I was talking about a cruise control system, actually, right away I'm going, hang on, this is a state transition diagram. Why do I have 2 entry points to the off state? That shouldn't have happened. And I have no exit state. So once I'm in that system, I'm not getting out of it. Small things that are easily editable though. Now also, I'm quite partial to putting my outputs on the transition. I don't like the output of a transition being embedded in a state, because I might get to the same state through a couple of different means, and each transition may cause a different output to appear, depending on the scenario. But you know what? I can go and ask ChatGPT really quickly and easily just to go and fix those little things, and within a couple of prompts, I've got a perfectly formed state transition diagram. Now, if I can do that, and I can generate Plant UML code that represents that, then as Eric said, I should be able to just automatically generate a whole bunch of tests from that using ChatGPT ideally, or my favourite tool, but maybe I could build, as Eric said, there's specialist tools out there that will do this for you. Now I should be able to generate the source code off it too. So it shouldn't just be the tests I should be able to write, it should be the source code as well. I know at this point I was shifting in my seat too, going, oh my gosh, is my job about to be eaten up? I hope not. I hope not, but I still think you need a human in the loop. The tester needs to look at this. They need to say, is this a complete and correct diagram? Because testers question everything. We live like it's Murphy's Law every single day. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, eventually does, and at least 10 times a day, especially when we get close to release. So a tester, I believe testers are the right people to get engaged at this point, to tell you what's wrong with the diagram, to find the gaps. Now, it's not only that, it doesn't just draw those types of diagrams, it's actually really cool. It draws all sorts of other diagrams. There's my backup just in case something went wrong. You can see occasionally it puts, if my cruise control is engaged and I want to increase or decrease my speed, I can press a button, stays engaged. Yeah, it's just wedged that in the engaged state. Again, minor detail, about 2 or 3 more prompts and I would have had ChatGPT giving me the right Plant UML. Now, I could also take a bunch of user stories. So let's imagine now we're on an agile project. We've written a very small number of user stories that describe the behaviour of a hotel booking system. In fact, only 3 user stories with some basic acceptance criteria. When I gave this to the students, by the way, I will say the acceptance criteria are intentionally gappy because I want them to work hard and see if there's gaps in the requirements. But I can just go ahead and, again, copy that. It's a really simple concept that ChatGPT should do really well with. I'll just start a new chat, paste that in, and I've got write the Plant UML code. I'll let it do its thing, and boom, in seconds, would have taken me an hour. Let me come down here, and I'll just go ahead and insert that Plant UML code. And boom, whoa, it's given me a different representation this time, but cool. Cool, that's a pretty good representation. Occasionally it does some strange things. I'd prefer it to loop back if it finds an error, if it experiences an error. And it doesn't tell me the difference between a user action and a system action. So if I'm booking a hotel room, who's showing the confirmation message, who's showing the error message as opposed to who entered the data and navigated. Now, I've got a few representations of this. In fact, you can actually just go ahead and tell ChatGPT, do you know what? Can you add swim lanes to that? Because I'd like swim lanes in my diagram. because swim lanes help me see which is a system action versus a user action. And you can see it's done a pretty good job. It still put some steps in that really didn't belong to the system. So, you know, I did a few iterations, and finally it gave me a really good diagram. You know, and I mean, it took, you know, it'd take 45 minutes, an hour maybe. Even if it took half an hour, it only took me 2 minutes with ChatGPT. Now, I have found it does much better with topics that it knows a lot about. So if you ask it to model something like a door locking system that is operated by a mobile phone, yeah, it goes really strange. Like it put everything in the locked state. Like everything's like, you know, embedded in the locked state. So if it's a newer technology that isn't written much about on the internet, of course ChatGPT won't have had the training. But a couple of prompts and I can iron out that even. It'll give me the right diagram eventually if I just iron it out. So, moving back to the slides. Okay. So I just want to put a parting thought on this. How do the testers get involved in that early stage in the life cycle? Now, as Anne-Marie pointed out this morning, Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory, I didn't realise they'd done work on this, but there's a key problem with our life cycle. Testing, by definition, in our life cycle comes after the requirements are written, after the coding and the building is done. Testing is sat there. Even in iterative, even in agile, testing is represented as this separate phase on the life cycle. Whereas we know we don't just test there, we test here and here and here and even here in operations, and we want to be part of the optimization process. And credit to Dan Ashby for raising this back in 2016. What I believe is that we actually need to get rid of testing as a phase in the life cycle. It's not a passing trend, it's not something that comes and goes from a project. Testing and quality has to happen on a continuum the whole way through the life cycle. So what I'm working on at Planet is building a thing that we call Q model to really, really drill home the fact that, in fact, testers and quality engineers need to be involved across that full life cycle, because that is where we will allow our company to build quality in the first place. We can't test quality in, we can only build it in. So that's the end of my section. Handing over now to David to talk about self-healing. Oh, there you are.
Thanks, Kathleen. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about AI, but I want you to focus on the first few words about closing feedback loops, because that's the real message of this. Using AI is I guess a means to the end. But it's really, I guess, the real lesson that I want to share with you is that as much as we can use AI, we have to put in place the processes so that it actually becomes useful. So, you know, if we are doing self-healing, we have to make sure that we're notifying our engineers that self-healing has occurred, so that they can go and either fix the test or question requirements or fix something else. Because, you know, if AI is having to kind of deal with things, it means then that whatever we had planned to do has gone wrong somewhere. Now, it may just be an environmental issue that we could resolve fairly easily, but, you know, at least we need to make sure that we're taking that feedback and dealing with it in an appropriate way. So let's talk about AI for a little bit, because it is so hot right now. This is something that came out of one of our AI presentations. It's all about GenAI and automated testing and all the, you know, what's valuable, what's feasible right now. Self-healing tests is over there. I'm going to move it up a little bit because I'm talking about self-healing tests, so I think we should make it a little bit more feasible and a little bit more valuable. So let's do that. But what I really want to show about here is that, you know, these are all the things that are going to fill our lives with joy over the next few years. They're going to make our lives so much better. But we just have to make sure that we're putting in processes, those feedback loops and those processes that are going to make each of these things much more helpful in our lives. Because it's, as Kathleen showed you, it's all great to generate diagrams and that's super helpful, but you still have to have the process of validating that those diagrams are correct. You need to have a way of making sure that that's happening, whether that's through a review or whether it's going through and you know, getting someone else to look at it. Much in the same way that we have code reviews for code. So similarly, let's talk about QE automation. I've kind of chopped off the pretzel, and let's be honest, it wouldn't be an automation talk without some sort of pretzel. But I've just chopped off the end and just sort of said, well, if we look at purely automation, we've kind of got a bit of framework design up the front there, and then we kind of loop around and we go build test cases, execute, and measure an insight. So what I want to do here is just to kind of say, well, look, that looks like a loop, and I'm talking about feedback loops, so this works really well. So I'm going to show you, I guess, a test case that I've built. We're going to execute it in a pipeline, and I'm going to get some sort of insight out of it. Hopefully, it will show that some self-healing has occurred. And I'll just talk about how I implement that and how I loop that back into the test case build phase. So something really simple, but it is Friday, and I am blocking Thursday at 4 p.m., so I am blocking you from nibbles, beers, and prizes, so I won't keep you for too long. All right, there's me praying to the demo gods. So hopefully this all works. It's not bad, actually. It's not far off what we've got here with the center aisle. So, yeah, I like it. All right, so let's have a look and see. All right. So, given that we're at Testing Talks, I thought it would be great if we actually tested the Testing Talks website. So Cam, I'm glad you're here. Believe it or not, 10 years ago, I actually had the opportunity to briefly be Cam's people manager. And it was a very enriching experience. Credit to him, he was one of the easier people to manage. And over the last 10 years, Cam, I just want to say it's been wonderful to see how you've grown, how you've taken all of your passions and turned them into projects that you've actually followed through and completed. So, Cam, congratulations on 5 years of Testing Talks. Really, really great. So, all right. By the way, how many of you have got kids? Okay. Keep your hands up. How many of you have ever hired a grad or someone who's just starting out in testing? You can hold up both hands or just one or many. Okay, great. So, congratulations. You have all trained a neural network. Okay. And speaking of training neural networks, when I was managing Cam, it was a very wonderful time. But that didn't go well. No, that was funnier in my mind. All right, so let's talk about the Testing Talks website, and we'll be very quick. So in this case, we're going to go here. We're going to check the register form because that's a very key part of the site. We're going to test some validation. Don't worry, I'm not actually going to submit any forms, Cam. So although I'm sure you want extra regos for next year, so we can make it happen. But oops, let's go to my very simple test. I'm using Concept.js. It's sitting on top of Playwright. And there's a good reason why I use Concept, because it has a little bit of AI fun in it that they're experimenting with. And hopefully you can read my test. It's hopefully fairly readable. I'm on the page. I click register. I fill the field first name, create account. I click create account, and I should see some error messages, right? So last name can't be blank. There's a typo in my test. I should fix that. So let's change that to first name. Just make it correct. First name. And we're going to run this. My typing is horrible. And there we go. Please don't judge me. So let's run it. Let's see if this passes. It should, right? It looks pretty good. While it's running, I'll tell the joke. How many QA or how many testers does it take to change a light bulb? Anyone? None. They're only going to tell you that it's dark. No, yeah. So, again, another joke that didn't go down well. It's an old one, but a good one. All right, so we're running. It's running in headless mode, so you won't see browsers coming up. So it's a pretty lackluster demo from that point of view, and that nothing's going to happen while it's just working in the background. But we should. Oh, there we go. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Cam. This has been a real joy. So we can go in here and first name field was not found. I wonder why. I'm pretty sure Cam knows. I think you baked in some bugs when you developed the site. So I do give you some credit here. You have made my job easier. But right, I mean, it says first name was not found by text, CSS, or XPath. So now I'm pretty sure on the site there's actually a first name field. So I'm already looking at this going like, hang on a second, I see first name, why can't I detect first name? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the power of self-healing. And the way I do that is I do exactly the same thing I did before, but I go minus AI. And we're going to run that, and we're going to see what happens. And this is the magic, because that little command line, hopefully, will fix the test for me, and I'll have a passing test, and we'll all be good, and we can go home and drink beer. Well, we can just stay here and drink beer, rather. Hey, there we go. Code healed successfully by Planet Amplify. Amplify is our internal GPT system. And hey, there we go. We've got a passing test. So this is really great. I'm loving this, and we can actually see what the response from Amplify has been. So Amplify, GPT, either one, either or. It's basically come back and it said, to heal the test that fails at the step, blah, 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 we need to use a more specific locator. It's very, very very, very helpful to me. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. You're really telling me, what I should do. And it's come up with a code suggestion saying, I field first name. And CodeCept has been nice enough to go, oh, yeah, I can parse that, and I'm going to run that step and see if it passes, and if I can continue the test from there. And it does. So it does a really good job of doing that. Now, again, this is a very simple test. It does have problems with more complex things like iframes and stuff like that, because what it's doing in the background is it's just sending the HTML code into GPT, and it's just saying, hey, what went wrong? I'm trying to do this. Why can't I do it? But the nice thing is that because when I run this in CI/CD, and this is the message that I want to really drive home, because there are plenty of tools that will do self-healing, or they will purport to say that they do self-healing. There's plenty of tools that do all different flavors of AI, and I'm sure over the next few years we'll see it improve and it'll get better. But without the process in place for my CI/CD pipeline to report the error back to the tester, this is fairly meaningful, because I'll never ever look at it. I'll see a green test and I'll go, hey, everything's good. And that's the real key that I want to drive home today. It's just that simple. You need to make sure that you've got some sort of feedback loop. Now, I won't show it here, but I could if I wanted to, but I have this running in GitHub. It will throw a warning, so the test will pass, but it will throw a warning. It'll send an email alert to me saying, hey, I had to do self-healing, something's obviously gone wrong. And that's the prompt then for me, the automator, to go, I wonder why it had to self-heal. I probably should look into that. And that's pretty much it. But there is one more thing I wanted to say. Cam's site, while it works functionally, if you look at the code, my God, did I teach you nothing 10 years ago? It was built a long time ago. So, there's...
For anyone that hasn't built with Ruby on Rails, it generates all of your code.
Yeah. So this is pre-AI, so it's a bit subpar. I can tell there's been a lot of copy and pasting. Let's just put it that way. No, and I do. I'm pretty sure when you were first telling me about this, you did say you baked in a couple of bugs. So I'm guessing that this is on purpose, that you've assumed that people will just be looking at your source code and trying to find bugs. So whilst this does pick up the correct field, and it does tell me that the site is working functionally, it does not tell me that the code was picked up off the footpath of fairyland during a midnight coding run by Cam. It doesn't tell me that the code is not accessible at all. It doesn't tell me that if you chuck a screen reader on it, it would go use a first name field. That does not exist. But there is some other hashtag first name something or other, because all the labels are mixed up and all that. So there's still issues that don't get picked up by this, even though my test is self-healed. So there still needs to be that step of an automator going in and try to figure out what's wrong. Because it didn't take me long to look at it and go, well, why is this label not working? And you could see that the IDs were all wrong as soon as you look at the source code. Could we throw that at some sort of GPT or LLM or something? Yeah, of course we could. But we just, again, need to keep closing that feedback loop. Keep doing it over and over again. Quick question here.
So is the next step to do a diff between the old code and the new code and show it to you and say, hit yes to replace?
You could do that. It does suggest, if I go down here, it does actually suggest the full script. Hey, look, here's the script that I think you're trying to run. So you could copy and paste that in and go, yeah, cool, my test works. I mean, it's picking up the IDs, which is great, but yeah, as a locator strategy, I think we could do better. I'm very partial to the accessibility tree way of finding things. So, yeah, great question. But that's pretty much, I think that's it for us. Yeah, so we talked about modernizing the QE pretzel, or modernizing the QE process from the start, from the requirements point of view, and what we can do there and how we can utilize AI, but how we still want to be involved. I looked at it from the automation point of view, at how it's all great, it's fantastic, but we need to make sure that we've got all the feedback loops and all the things there that we need to make sure that we can still see things from a good quality point of view.
Question for her. First question.
Yes.
For you. So you usually people should not hear our fingertips, but embrace it, and also even if the AI is being used, what's most important, if there will be hallucinations, that's why you encourage developers to use the professional clinical judgment, not just AI.
Yeah, great question. I think we should embrace AI wholeheartedly, but with skepticism at the same time. So I think if we don't adopt AI, we're going to be left behind. I think if developers are accelerating their part of the life cycle, and yet our part of the life cycle is still really long and manual, then we are going to look like the ones that are slowing things down even more than stakeholders try and complain that we're doing that already. So I think that we do have to look at how can we best adopt AI. Where are the sensible parts of the life cycle to adopt it in? How can we adopt it across the whole life cycle, in fact? But how do we do that safely? So where do we still need a human in the loop? How do we best want that human in the loop? As David said, if you've got a self-healing algorithm, make sure it reports the fact that it's self-healed. If you've got a diagram being drawn of a business process, don't just assume ChatGPT's done the right thing. You still need humans to eyeball it and tell you if it's got gaps, especially if it's a newer technology. And I think particularly when you've got end-to-end systems, systems of systems, where you might have a CRM interacting with a core banking system, interacting with an app and internet banking and a phone banking system, and you've got Salesforce and doing marketing cloud, everything. I mean, you can't just pick up any tool in the world and get it to write tests for the whole end-to-end solution. You still need testers and quality engineers to create those tests or pull the tests together into end-to-end workflows.
So what you're saying is still use your clinical skills with the AI.
Absolutely. Still be Murphy. Everything's going to go wrong. I'm sure it will. But Murphy was actually an aerospace engineer, and he actually, what he originally said is, if there's any two solutions, someone will always choose the solution eventually that doesn't work. And so you have to assume that might happen, but AI might give you something, so you should embrace it, but with caution. It's my opinion. And if we don't, I think we're going to get left behind. Yeah, great question. Yes, Anne-Marie. Oh yeah, do we have a microphone? Thank you, Cam.
Run, Cam, run.
Yeah.
So really interesting talk, got loads of ideas from it, thanks. One of the things you were looking at the state model diagram, which is awesome. Have you thought much about the work you've done to, is it the state model that's correct versus the requirements are the correct, and having some way of feeding back that loop to the requirements to say, actually, your requirements are incomplete versus... Yeah, so is there a feedback loop in your work?
Definitely, definitely. So you can either start by asking ChatGPT, where are the gaps in these requirements, and then circle back. But I usually find it helps to draw a diagram first in a separate session, and then get it to look at where the gaps are, so that I can look, where do I think the gaps are, and where does it think the gaps are? Otherwise, I kind of get blindsided by what it thinks, and I don't engage my own mind enough. So I think
Kathleen is a very visual learner as well.
I'm a very visual learner,
yeah,
exactly.
It works for you. You found a workflow that really works.
Totally works for me. I'm not a very good auditory learner. If I see it, I can understand it. So a lot of words on a page kind of get lost on me, but a diagram, boom, I can see it. So for me, draw the diagram and ask ChatGPT, where do you think the bugs are? And I can even dog feed it, feed it back its diagram code and say, can you find gaps in what you've drawn based on what I asked you to draw? Also, I did find that ChatGPT has recently started considering the context of all the other questions I've asked it. So, and even when I tell it not to, because I ask it a lot about ISO standards from time to time, and I can say to it, do a risk assessment. Don't base it on ISO 25010. Just make it a generic risk assessment. And every single time it's giving me functional correctness. Or I'm like, no, I don't want that. So I found I do sometimes, and you can toggle that on and off. I think if you were doing this kind of process where you want it to question its own work, and if you've used a few prompts in a few different chats, it's better to turn that toggle off so it's not considering the previous context and it's always coming at it from a creative direction. Yeah, great question though, Anne-Marie, good one. Thank you. Any other questions?
Anything else?
We are holding you from,
We'll
prizes and
We'll
beer
ask a
o'clock.
question quickly so we can do
We
this.
do.
Can you remember the question?
I can.
No, good.
I can. So apart from requirement quality issues, what was one of the other quality issues that organisations are experiencing that we showed on our graph? Yes? Oh, was you first? Go. Yes, stakeholder requirements not clear. Yes, well done. Very good.